Carl, during these times of crisis and different challenges, what advice do you have for people as we head into the holiday season?
My advice for people as we go through the COVID-19 challenge, the economic downturn that has resulted, a time of great unrest, and I believe incivility as a country that's permeated into our communities is a few. First, I never use the word crisis. I use the word challenge, and it is intentional. People panic in a crisis. People rise up to meet a challenge. So words matter. We are in challenging times. Second, remember, we are in a challenge. We are in a global pandemic. We are not going to stay in a global pandemic. There's a great psalm by King David that talks about walking through the valley of the shadow of death. You're walking through it. You're not camping out there. Winston Churchill once said that when you find yourself in hell, keep going. We will get through this crisis. If there's anything we know from pandemics throughout history, they have a starting point and they have an ending point. This will end. As hard as today might be, this week, this month, this year might be, please remember, we will get through it, and we do it best when we do it together. It's important to remember that we'll all go through challenging time, but build on those challenging times to prepare yourself for future challenges. I've had the pleasure of leading 16 ballot initiative campaigns, primarily for transportation and housing, at the countywide, regional, and state level here in California. And during challenging campaigns, I'll often reflect back on 2008. And why was 2008 so unique? In 2008, we were preparing for a transportation ballot initiative in Santa Clara County. 3 years of planning, red hot economy, everything was falling in place. And then that red hot economy started to crumble. And I remember pulling together my team at the Silicon Valley Leadership Group, myself and 6 others, who were going out on loan for 5 months, nearly 150 days, 7 days a week, no days off, 100-hour weeks. Pulling them together, showing them polling that our pollster said proved we could not win the election. I sat my team down and said, if you all want to pull the plug before we officially put this on the ballot next week, now is the time to do so. And this is a team decision, because as a team, we're going to be working 24/7 for months on end. And if even one of you says pull the plug, I will pull the plug and not put you through it. And we went around the room, and to a person they said, we need to do this for our community. We're going to put everything we can into this and see if we can defy the polls. Well, that election day came and went. It was during the steepest and deepest economic downturn that our country had seen since the Great Depression. And we actually were not successful on election night. Yet as absentee ballots came in, as provisional ballots came in, more than 4 weeks later, when all the votes had been counted and cast, out of nearly 750,000 votes cast, we were able to win with a 66.78% margin by 0.11%, 2,250 votes. We were able to win that transportation ballot funding measure that led to the opening of the BART extension to Milpitas and Berryessa this past summer. If we had trusted the polls if we had given in to the temptation to walk away rather than risk everything, we would have lost. And I often remember that leading other ballot initiative campaigns or leading teams through trying circumstances, that if we're working together, individually and collectively, we can often defy the odds that say you will fail. I'm often asked if there are failures in my life that stand out, and there are certainly numerous failures, both professionally and personally. So I'm going to share a failure, but I'm also going to share a pet peeve. I've often heard people on stage, and even people that I respect, saying, quote, "In Silicon Valley, we celebrate failure." I don't celebrate failure. I mourn failure. I'm frustrated by failure, but I try to learn from failure so that we can build on that. And I'll give you an example. It was 2006, and we were leading an initiative campaign in Santa Clara County. Now, I have the pleasure of now having led or co-led 15 county, regional, or statewide ballot initiatives, primarily for housing and transportation. And I've been fortunate with great teams and learning after each campaign. We have won 14 out of 15 of those ballot initiatives. The one that we did not win was June of 2006. And election night, when it was clear that we had lost, that next morning, I mourned for a month at least. And the reason I mourned wasn't just what we were not able to gain that we had placed on the ballot, but all the people who had entrusted their time, their treasure, their talent in my belief that we could be successful together. That's what I mourned. And I remember visiting with one of my mentors, a CEO who was the former president and publisher of the Mercury News. And I walked into his office and he could tell I was down. And we talked about the campaign. And he only had one question. And it wasn't a berating question. It was, "Carl, what did you learn from the loss?" What did you learn from the loss? I went away to the wilderness for a few days, and I wrote down all the lessons learned from the loss. Because we are bound as humans who are frail and fragile to make mistakes. We are not bound to repeating mistakes. And I used that opportunity not to dig a deeper hole, but to build a firm foundation for future campaigns. That's what allowed us to come back 2 years later in 2008 for that wonderful victory that defied the odds of the pollsters, the pundits, and others. And we've continued to build winning campaigns from that time for the common good.